Hello everyone, and welcome once again to the Temple Institute Parsha class. My name is Gedalia Meyer, and I'm podcasting from Ma'ale Adumim in Israel. At some point in life, everyone has to confront the so-called life-changing experience. These can come in the form of flashes of insight, traumatic encounters, profound relationships, or any of an almost infinite variety of other such rendezvous with destiny. They may be among the most difficult experiences of our lives, and they may be among the most pleasant. They could be among the most bland, and we may not realize for many years that this totally uneventful thing was what set us on an irreversible course towards the future. Such are the whims of life. These life changes are not limited to individuals. Groups could undergo the exact same experience on a collective level and either realize or not realize that they have jointly reached a point of no return. This could occur to a small group of friends, a family, a segment of society, an entire nation, or even the whole human race. Examples of this might include the death of one member, a breakup of a family, a new focus, or a new invention that steers everyone into a future that is as set in stone as erosion is to a mountain. Such an event could be the introduction of electricity into society as a whole, or the creation of the computer. These sorts of things, whether we approve of them or not, become our unwitting and possibly unwanted guides in our personal or collective paths. We may fight these game changers tooth and nail. We may refuse to submit to this unasked for intrusion into the comfortable and predictable course that we were on previously. But we may come to realize, perhaps after many years, that all such protestation is for naught. This event, whatever it was and whatever impact it may have had at the time, was the event that decided our future, regardless of anything we did or do to prevent it. It is not easy to submit to such fatalism. It is a direct affront to our notions of free choice and independence from the blind forces of fate. But again, this is just one more manifestation of our refusal to accept reality as it is and to insist that it be the way that we want it to be. This week's Parsha is called Shelach. That word means send. The introduction to a command by God that the Israelites send spies into the land of Canaan to get an accurate feel of the lay of the land. The spies were selected by Moshe and sent on their mission with no apparent sense of the disaster that was perhaps already in the cards. This disaster stemmed from the mixed report the spies brought back from their 40-day journey into various parts of the Holy Land. Although they did say that the land was indeed good, as they were told to expect, they added that it would not be easy to overcome the current inhabitants and conquer the land. This somewhat pessimistic outlook of things created a general mood among the people that this entire endeavor was one grand mistake. They voiced their by now familiar complaint of, "We should have stayed in Egypt rather than risking everything on this roll of the dice." They went even so far as to suggest appointing a new leader and heading right back to Egypt. Things just went downhill from there. Despite a fruitless attempt by Moshe, Aaron, and others to quell this pessimism, it was not meant to be. The mob mentality had already set in, and there was no turning things back. At that point, the classic biblical wrath of God enters the picture. In what has become the definitive statement of divine judgment, God threatens to destroy them and make a greater and more faithful nation out of Moshe somehow. It is left for Moshe himself, despite this promising offer, to intercede with God and mitigate this harsh judgment. As miraculous as it may seem, Moshe succeeded in this beyond all expectations. God relented from this degree of finality and agreed to a compromise. The famous compromise was that all those who saw firsthand the miracles that had taken place in Egypt and yet refused to maintain the faith that the same thing could happen when they finally made it to Canaan would never get to live in the Holy Land. Their punishment was to wander in the desert until they died. The mitigated decree was also harsh, of that there is no doubt. It was to be in a somewhat proportional relationship to the journey of the spies, which caused the whole breakdown in faith. Each day the spies journeyed, which totaled 40 days, would correspond to a year of wandering around the wilderness. Hence the famous 40 years of the Israelites wandering in the desert. This decree was to be final, sealed by no less than the oath of God. There were to be no more attempts on the part of Moshe to appease God, to cut them some slack. It seems possible that even Moshe understood that there was no bargaining left on this matter. Perhaps he agreed, however reluctantly, that there had to be serious consequences for what had happened. If that meant that an entire generation would have to die in the wilderness and would never see the fruits of the great promise that was made when they left Egypt, so be it. Some things are final. As it turns out, however, this was not the end of the story of the spies. There is a very brief aftermath that is easily missed in all the drama of the main events. This aftermath began when the Israelites finally understood the seriousness of the decree and went into a state of collective mourning. Quote, "They got up the next morning and they ascended to the top of the hill to declare that they were ready to go all the way to the place that God had told them, for they had sinned. Moshe said to them, 'Why are you transgressing the word of God? It will not succeed. Do not go, for God is not among you. Do not get killed by your enemies. The Amalekite and Canaanite tribes are there, and you shall fall by the sword. You have swerved away from God, and God shall not be with you.' But they insisted on climbing to the top of the hill, though the Ark of the Covenant and Moshe did not move from the camp. The Amalekites and the Canaanites who lived in the hills ambushed them and pursued them all the way to Hormah." So ended the ill-fated attempt to stem the harsh judgment of the spies and find another way into the Holy Land. Though Moshe told them in advance that there was no way such a rogue venture could succeed, they refused to listen and met with disaster. Though it is difficult to say that this second disaster was really worse than the first one, which started the whole cascade to begin with, it was a catastrophe in its own right. They tried to get back on course, and they were defeated. It is easy to imagine the pessimism that set in when they first heard the mixed report of the spies was magnified when they met severe defeat in their first attempt to actually enter Canaan. This was really nothing less than the hard truth of the decree crystallizing into harsh reality right before their eyes. It has to be wondered, why did they do this? They were explicitly told that it would not work. They were not joined by Moshe or in any way assured of divine assistance. Why didn't they simply head back down that hill and face the reality of 40 years wandering around the wilderness? Simply saying that they regretted what they had done and wanted to set things right really doesn't answer this question. The decree was final and there was no going back on it. This was made absolutely clear to them. In the end, as they saw all too clearly, they failed. On the other hand, there is the possibility that this ill-fated attempt at rectification was really a noble venture. They were trying, after all, to get things back on course. They recognized that they were wrong in the reaction to the spies' report, and that what was decreed upon them was just. They simply wanted to roll back the clock and start again. Was this really such a terrible goal? What, in the end of the day, was really wrong with what they were trying to accomplish? Perhaps the answer to this question lies in the nature of recognizing and coming to grips with one of those life-changing events. These people, however noble their motivations, had clearly not accepted the decree that had been imposed upon them. Like little children who sometimes think that whatever they did has no lasting consequences, and that whatever punishment is imposed upon them will be forgotten and ignored with the passing of time. These Israelites didn't get that the decree was real and absolute, and that there was no going back to the way things were before. It is a sign of maturity to recognize that sometimes things can never go back to the way they were. Sometimes decrees or fates or phases of life are real and final. There are times in life when we eagerly accept these life changers as facts of life. We look forward to the next phase as a definitive step in the direction we hope to head. Examples of this are moving away from home to go to college or to start a new life somewhere else. A new job or a new personal pursuit may be something to look forward to as a way to get going. Certainly a marriage or some new long-term relationship fits this description. We want these things to last, and work out. And we don't want to be told that we can always go back to the way it was before we took this huge leap. It is the recognition that the step was final that grants it the possibility of actually working. But even with that innocent eagerness to move on to the next phase, there frequently lingers a longing for the option of simply canceling everything and going back to the womb, whatever that may have been. This is natural and it is human, but it doesn't necessarily fit with reality. Reality is recognizing that some things have to be final, either because that is the only way they will ever succeed in working the way we want them to, or because that is simply the way it is. It is only with that recognition that we truly come to grips with where we are and in which direction we have to head. The Israelites, way back there in the story of the Spies, put themselves on a course from which there was no going back. They had made a choice in their relationship with God and their destiny. And the only way forward was to live with the consequences of that choice. To expect that a decree from God over a pretty drastic collective failure could just be overlooked or forgotten is to not recognize that reality is real. There was no possibility that such a warped outlook could succeed. It behooves us to take this lesson to heart and to realize that we, in our own individual and collective ways, reach these points of no return at certain junctures in life or in history, and that there is no way back. Sometimes there is only one way forward. Shabbat Shalom.